It's up! Cenk, Uygur, and Kasparian with you guys. Do we have a fantastic show ahead for you? Come on, but don't be ridiculous. Of course we do.
It'll be all right.
No, this guy is amazing. Okay, this guy is amazing.
No, it is going to be very good. Okay.
Okay, seriously.
Some would say that you're going to enjoy it bigly. Okay. It's one of the best shows. People are saying it's one of the best shows.
Look, I don't want to use the S word and say it's going to be a show, but I'm gonna use it. Okay, we will see that later on.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Seriously, we've got, of course, Trump being goofy and of course potential world wars. This is the news these days. But I think one of the most interesting parts of today's show is going to be breaking down different interviews within the media and showing you what's the action behind the action. Oh, drums. All right, Casper.
Really? What story is that?
I'll show you.
Oh no. Okay, all right. Let's talk about potential World War III. Vladimir Putin has announced that he is suspending Russia's participation in what is referred to as the START Treaty, a treaty that he entered with the United States, which limits the nuclear capability of both countries. So we're doing great, lots of progress when it comes to geopolitics. He says, quote, I am forced to announce, are you forced? I'm forced to announce today that Russia is suspending its participation in the Strategic Offensive Arms Treaty. Putin told lawmakers toward the end of a major speech to parliament nearly 1 year into his invasion into Ukraine. Now, what exactly is the START Treaty and what did it do? Well, the START Treaty was originally signed back in 2010 in Prague specifically, and then they decided to extend it during Biden's administration in 2021. Of course, this is prior to Russia's invasion into Ukraine. It caps the number of strategic nuclear warheads that the United States and Russia can deploy. Although if you deploy any, we're already in bad shape. So look, honestly, just reading what the START Treaty does, I don't really think this is that big of a deal. However, I'm uncomfortable with how often Vladimir Putin brings up the topic of nuclear weapons in various ways as this war continues.
Yeah, so look, there's two ways to interpret that. One is he's saber rattling, and it's a good halfway measure where he's threatening us without actually doing anything. If that interpretation proves to be correct, great. Then take all the quarter measures, half measures that you want, as long as you don't actually launch anything, right? And I think the Chinese agree with me. We'll get to that in a minute. But the, of course, other possibility is he's doing exactly what he did at the border, where he piled up the troops and said, I'm gonna come in, and unless you give me X. And then they gave him X, and he's like, well, I'm just kidding, I was gonna come in anyway, right? And so, and in this case, he could be saying, yeah, I'm gonna deploy more nuclear missiles. And by the way, deploy just could mean that, hey, I've got more subs with nukes that I was supposed to have under the treaty in the water now. I've got more missiles ready to go now. Using them is a different thing, but it could be a prelude to using them. So this is, look, I've said this many times. We keep assuming that Putin won't do it when he's shown on a great number of occasions when we think he won't do something, he does actually do it. So
Vladimir Putin has the largest stockpile of nuclear weapons of any country. I didn't know that. I thought that the United States and Russia was either equal in the number of the nuclear weapons, or honestly, I thought the US probably had more. But Russia currently has 6,000 warheads.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter if they had 600.
Why do you need 6,000? Why do you need 6,000? Like one will do the destruction, right? Yeah. Like it's amazing.
Yeah, because we got into this really, really dumb
arms race.
Yeah. And this treaties like this were supposed to cool down the arms race and now Putin's saying no. And by the way, for the Russians, probably half of them don't work, but they don't need it anyway. I mean, 600 could probably wipe out humanity, let alone 6,000.
Correct.
So the minute you start launching them, it's an epic disaster we can't recover from. Again, I think the Chinese are our best friends in this case, even though we're demagoguing against them. Can I just read that quote? Okay, Xi and Biden talked, and Xi has said this, and the Chinese diplomats have said this on a number of occasions, but the quote is important. Nuclear weapons cannot be used and nuclear wars must not be fought, the Chinese leader said. So they're now beginning to side with Russia. We're really mad about it. We're saying their Chinese are helping the Russians with lethal aid. But here's the Chinese saying basically, look, the rule we're laying down for the Russians is maybe we help you, maybe we stay neutral, maybe we even give you some arms, but you cannot do nuclear strikes. If you do, then we're out. And they're saying that very publicly.
Yeah, and let me be clear about something. As far as I've read, maybe you came across some information that I missed, but I have not seen any indication that China is willing to provide lethal weapons to Russia. Now,
yeah,
the US,
this is what the Americans are saying.
Right, the US State Department is accusing Russia of that. They claim, and Anthony Blinken specifically claims that they have information indicating that China is considering providing lethal weapons to Russia, but we haven't really seen any real evidence of that. And China certainly has not in any way overtly committed to providing weapons to Russia. But beside that, look, the fact of the matter is China is straddling both sides, because they want to improve their relationship with the West in certain regards, especially with Germany and France. But they are also purchasing pretty cheap oil from Russia at the same time. So there is a benefit in straddling both sides, right?
Yeah, and the extra benefit that people aren't talking about that I'm alluding to here is if China serves as a check on Putin, saying, hey, here's a line you cannot cross, otherwise you'll have no allies left. That could actually be super helpful to the rest of the world. So that's why us like blowing down China's doors with all of our warmongering talk against them is not at all helpful.
I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. So I want to give you a few other excerpts from Putin's speech. He says that he is suspending the treaty, but it doesn't mean that he's pulling out of the treaty. He says, of course, we will not be the first to carry out nuclear tests, but if the United States tests, then we will. No one must be under any dangerous illusions that global strategic parity can be destroyed. He also says Western elites aren't trying to conceal their goals to inflict a strategic defeat to Russia. They intend to transform the local conflict into a global confrontation. And he is definitely telling the truth about that, because here is Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin in April of 2022 making it abundantly clear that they want to essentially use this conflict to weaken Russia to the best of the United States' abilities. Let's watch.
We want to see Russia weakened to the degree that it can't do the kinds of things that it has done in invading Ukraine. So it has already lost a lot of military capability. And a lot of its troops, quite frankly. And we want to see them not have the capability to very quickly reproduce that capability.
So, statements like that make it clear to everybody, including Vladimir Putin and Russia, that we are looking for them to basically deplete what is left of their military capability. And we brought this up when we covered the story yesterday, and I think it's an important point to touch on, because when it comes to what the United States is urging in this conflict, is there some messaging in regard to avoiding peace negotiations or a peace deal? I'm concerned about that. And as that is being discouraged, Russia, with an irrational actor like Vladimir Putin, is getting more and more belligerent in regard to his comments on nuclear war.
Yeah, so I want to break down the last quote from Putin that Anna read you, because it's about a third right. Are we trying to weaken Russia through this conflict? Yes, absolutely correct. Okay, and you just saw it; it's not in dispute, right? But do we want a global confrontation? No, we want to drive up defense contractor contracts to as much as humanly possible, dump it on the American taxpayer. We want oil prices to be high. We want speculation in the financial industry to be high, et cetera. We're just trying to make as much money as possible for our elites. That's the only goal of our government.
That's not the only goal. I don't think that's the only goal. I think the other goal is to weaken Russia militarily to ensure that China really doesn't have another superpower to align with should we continue antagonizing them.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, our goal is financial. I don't think, we gain, all of the elites in our country gain by picking on a smaller country like Iraq and destroying it for profit, right? But if you go against Russia, nobody's gonna gain from New York getting nuked, okay? So, but we're playing a super dangerous game of confrontation that could accidentally lead to that. But there's one other part of that statement. He says they want to inflict, Putin said, a strategic defeat to Russia. Well, you know how you could have prevented that, Vlad, by not invading Ukraine.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly. Okay, nobody forced a strategic defeat on you. You made that decision, and apparently, not so bright, you had no idea what your military's capability was. I mean, you got humiliated there, and now you're trying to save face. That's why the Chinese being allies with the Russians, I'm telling you, is not such a bad thing, because if the Chinese go screw it, we're not allies with you either, then he's fully backed into a corner and thinks I got nothing left to lose. And that's a really bad place for Putin to be.
So we'll see what happens in the future. Obviously, I think the best path forward is to encourage, pressure both sides to engage in a peace deal. We're nowhere near that right now, and things continue to escalate, and that's what's concerning about it. So we'll stay on the story and let you guys know updates as we learn about them. All right, well, moving on to other news. Unfortunately, Marjorie Greene is continuing with her divisive and insane commentary about what the future of America should look like. So let's watch.
We've seen people fleeing those leftist policies and moving to states like Florida, Georgia, Texas, states where they like the tax policies, they like the schools, they like the consequences of Republican and red policies. What I think would be something that some red states could propose is, well, okay, if Democrat voters choose to flee these blue states where they cannot tolerate the living conditions, they don't want their children taught these horrible things, and they really change their mind on the types of policies that they support, well, once they move to a red state, guess what? Maybe you don't get to vote for 5 years. You can live there, you can work there, but you don't get to bring your values that you basically created in the blue states you came from by voting for Democrat leaders and Democrat policies.
Fresh off her widely criticized tweet calling for a so-called national divorce between red states and blue states, Marjorie Greene is now proposing a temporary voting ban on self-identifying Democrats who move out of so-called blue states to red states. Let's hear a little bit more from what she has to say, and then I'm gonna show you a map of the United States, a map that apparently Marjorie Greene is unfamiliar with. Let's watch.
What does a national divorce look like in your estimation?
Well, a national divorce is not a civil war. It's actually separating by red states and blue states and making state rights and state power a lot stronger than it is right now. It would be shrinking the federal government. For example, we can take education. Well, if we have a national divorce, there's no need for the Department of Education. Red states and blue states would be in control of the education in each state. Red states would very likely have traditional education, homeschooling, charter schools, private schools, technical schools. They would not allow any type of gender lies being taught in their schools. LGBTQ woke teachers would be fired and not allowed to teach there. They would allow parents to be able to choose the curriculum instead of school boards that don't respect parents' beliefs and traditional family values. And it maybe in blue states, they would have full gender transition schools for their students. I don't know what they would do, but I'm sure their education would look different than ours.
this is what culture war brain rot looks like. Cenk, what happened during the Civil War? What was the Civil War about?
Well, we kind of split up into northern states and southern states, kind of like red and blue. And then the southern states wanted more state power.
So like a national divorce kind of situation.
Exactly what she described.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's stunning how ignorant she is. In the red states, do they teach history at all? Do they teach civics at all? Now look, ironically, as you guys know, probably if you watched yesterday, she's from a blue state. So she doesn't even know what state she's in. Georgia voted for Biden and Obama twice and has 2 Democratic senators, etc. She's so incredibly ignorant, but that's exactly what happened during the Civil War.
Let's take a look at this map of the United States. As you can tell, you can see the red depicting the red voters or the Republican voters, and the blue depicting the Democratic voters. There's a lot of mixing going on, Cenk, right? So how do you determine how this national divorce happens? And by the way, let's just address the fact that she is telling the American people that if you have one political identity and you move to a state that she has determined is a so-called red state, well, your rights to vote should be taken away from you for 5 years. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, how ridiculous is that? So if you're a Republican and you move to California, should your voting rights be banned? I would never in a million years propose something that disgusting. But this is who they are, right? People like Marjorie Greene specifically use culture war issues to get Americans to think of each other as enemies, right? Oh, people living in Florida or Texas are my enemies. They're my enemies based on their views on culture, based on their views on what the right, social fabric for this country should be. No, we're Americans. We might have disagreements, but guess what? There are a lot more agreements among Americans, regardless of their political affiliation, than people like Marjorie Greene would have you believe. In fact, let me give you some examples. Sorry, Cenk. This kind of garbage really does fire me up because we gotta stop fighting each other as ordinary Americans and really look up at people in power who have an interest in dividing and conquering us. So interesting poll that didn't really get much coverage. This was done by YouGov. They looked at voters between January and September of 2022, and here's what they found. 73% of Americans think teachers should get paid more. 61% support policies that would prevent landlords from raising rent. 65% of Americans have an unfavorable view of Mitch McConnell. Hear to that. 60% of Americans support more spending on public housing. 67% support the government offering medical debt forgiveness. 79% of Americans have favorable views of Social Security. 79% have a favorable view of Medicare. 77% have favorable views of other social spending programs, including disability insurance. You want me to go on? But they don't want us to focus on what we have in common, on how we want to do something about economic justice in this country or the economic injustice we've been living under. All we do all day long is talk about whatever manufactured culture war Republicans want to frame the argument with. And I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it.
Yeah,
anyway.
Well, look, if the elites wanted to do a false flag operation, this is exactly what they would. They would plant someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, did they? I don't think they're that smart. No, I think she's an actual person with those actual thoughts.
She's a useful tool.
Yeah, but the elites must be thinking, how did we get this lucky? Because Anna's, all those numbers are right. The first chapter of my book, Justice is Coming, is poll after poll after poll showing we all agree, we all agree. Do you know that 59% of Americans say that corporations have too much money and power? I mean, no one on TV thinks that, no one in Washington thinks too much money and power. How much is even too much? I don't know, but 60% of 6 out of 10 Americans say, no, corporations are so bad, I just don't even want them to have that much money. I mean, which is honestly a position I don't even agree with. It's to the left of me. 6 out of 10 Americans are to the left of me, right? Let alone the 2/3 and the 3/4 that agree with us on every major issue, right? But when you send someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene in, she's so effective at her job because not only does she get her side riled up, like, we hate gays, don't let him teach, we hate gays, right? She said it, she said, we fire all the LGBTQ teachers. You can rewind the tape.
You know what? All right, do it. And listen, for all of the supporters of Marjorie Greene, I'm trying to be calm and reason with you, okay? I don't think you're necessarily a bad person. I just don't think you maybe have thought about this enough. Okay, all the gay teachers, transgender students, they're purged from the school systems across the country. Okay, how are you gonna pay your rent or your mortgage? What about your medical bills? What is Marjorie Greene and honestly the entirety of our legislature doing to improve your life right now? Nothing. So if that is what sustains you, if hating on others, getting people fired, if that's what feeds you, keeps you nice and warm at night, puts shelter or a roof over your head, great, except it doesn't. In the end, you're still struggling and you still have lawmakers not representing your best interest, but distracting you with whatever hate that they're instilling in your heart. It's disgusting. Don't fall for it.
Yeah, well, look, I have trouble not falling for it because I'm not gonna let them fire any gay teachers.
Of course not.
I know, and so I'm gonna fight her, right? So, and if you wanna talk about education, well, who's the absolute worst? The least woke states, Alabama and Mississippi. They've been led by Republicans for decades on end, and they're miserable in education. They're dead last because they don't care about education, they care about propaganda. Right? So you're forcing me to fight you because you keep saying, those hateful people, I love them so much. And I want all of you guys to have our values. You're not allowed to be gay. You're not allowed to be anything else. We're gonna rule over you. Well, what am I gonna do? Agree with you on that? No, of course I have to fight her on it. I'm not gonna let you. I don't want your life, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Your life looks miserable. I think your values are disgusting. I'm gonna exclude them and I'm gonna exclude them and I'm gonna rule over them. And then they say these gaslighting garbage like liberals want to control your life. Are you crazy?
I don't care.
I don't care about your stupid life, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Leave us alone. Go away, go into a cave and don't learn anything. And don't have any gay people around you and don't have any black people around you. You just said yesterday, we showed you a clip about, I know some white people that are so bad, they might be as bad as black people. Okay, go into a goddamn cave and do whatever the hell you want there, as long as you're not affecting us. So she forces us to fight back. And when we do, we're right back into the mess. And people don't know that over 80% of Americans believe in paid family leave. And the corporations win and they drive you back into your jobs at low pay. She's never fought for you. If you're a right winger, find me a right winger that fought for you on economic issues, that put food on your table, that took care of your family. No, all they have is hate, own the libs. We're gonna destroy their woke culture. Goddamn it, gay people, black people, immigrants, they're the problem. No, you idiots, look up. Who do you think has the power, you? And you forced me to say terrible things about you. Who do you think has the power? It's the corporations, I'm trying to contain myself. Corporate power has taken over all of our government and it's slowly crushing us. We have no economic dignity left. And yet you back people like this who keep attacking us and provoking us into these endless conflicts so that you're endlessly distracted from what you actually want, which is dignity, safety, security, and comfort for your family.
All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about how corporations like Starbucks feel about workers having any say over their working conditions or their pay. So don't miss that story. We've got that and more coming up.
Back on TOT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. More news.
Howard Schultz is in the news again. Let's watch.
Do you believe that there is room for a part of the Starbucks workforce to be unionized?
I think that'll have to happen in collective bargaining.
Because previously you've said, no, this is not in your vision. And the unions have said that is evidence that you are not, going to bargain with them.
Could you ever see doing that? and embracing the union as part of it?
No.
Starbucks founder and CEO Howard Schultz sat down with CNN's Poppy Harlow to share his views on the increasing unionization within the company. Now, as many as about 268 Starbucks stores have in fact voted in favor of forming a union. Now, Howard Schultz came back from retirement specifically to squash these unionization efforts, and luckily he hasn't succeeded. Keep in mind that 80% of the stores who voted to unionize did in fact succeed in forming a union, but that makes up only about 3% of Starbucks stores in the United States. You have to consider that there are many Starbucks stores in the US. Now, I want to get to the rest of the interview and some more information about what Starbucks has been up to in terms of squashing unionization efforts and how the National Labor Relations Board has stepped in to protect some of these workers. Before I do though, Cenk, do you want to weigh in on this? Because do you believe in any way that Howard Schultz is going to be receptive to this effort to unionize?
Well, so I think it's a little bit complicated. I think that when he started, he actually believed the things that he was saying, right? But people change based on the culture that they're in. That's just a fact for all of humanity. And he's been at that executive level and the billionaire level for a long, long time. So I watched that whole interview, and a lot of his assumptions are based on his new values, not the values he started Starbucks with. So if it was that Howard Schultz, he might be okay with unionizing, or he might have run a company that didn't need a union. That's what he keeps saying today. But if you watch the whole interview, he contradicts himself. He says, oh no, these were our values whether the union came in or not. And then later in the interview, he says, well, the union made us do this. Well, which one is it, right? And so the reality is it's kind of both. He started with those values, in my opinion, okay? And now whenever he talks, he's always like, hey, I got shareholders' value. And he said in the interview, hey, in the 10 months I've been back, our stock has gone up $40 billion.
I know,
but wouldn't that tell you that you could then afford a union? But he thinks, no, he's talking to other rich people and telling them, look at how great I am. I'm both magnanimous and making tons of money.
Yeah, shareholders aren't interested in what Starbucks can afford to spend money on, other than returns on investment for the shareholders.
Of course,
right?
they want maximum returns.
So his personal values don't really matter. His actions matter, right? And his actions have been to fire some of the workers who were unionizing their workplace.
No, that's my point.
Yeah.
He has new values and doesn't realize it. Now his values are, and he says it in the interview, maximizing shareholder value, right? No, values were supposed to be about morality. They weren't supposed to be about the value of the stock price.
Yeah, it's not like a year-end job performance review. Okay, that's not what values are. Okay, so let's go to some more of his video here. We'll also give you some details on why the workers want to unionize in a minute, but let's get to some more video.
It's my belief that the efforts of unionization in America are in many ways a manifestation of a much bigger problem. I've talked to thousands of our Starbucks partners in these co-creation sessions, and I was shocked, stunned to hear the loneliness, the anxiety, the fracturing of trust in government, fracturing trust in companies, fracturing of trust in family, the lack of hope in terms of opportunity. The primary reason that I was interested in trying to run for president was the very essence of helping people try, based on the life that I've led and where I grew up, to create an opportunity to get out of the malaise that they're in.
But I think some of those people are the ones that are pushing for unionization now and looking to you as the head of the company to come to the table with them.
It's interesting that he's looking outward instead of looking inward, right? Why do you think the workers want to unionize? Oh, it's because they don't trust politicians? Or could it be that they're looking around in their workplace, they feel powerless, they feel that they're not being compensated fairly, they don't feel the working conditions are humane, and so they want to have a seat at the table and the ability to collectively bargain with the employer in regard to these issues that have a very real material impact on their day-to-day lives.
Yeah, Anna, there's a second disconnect that we don't talk about enough. We just earlier in the show talked about the culture wars and how that creates a disconnect in the country between the right wing and the left wing when we actually share economic interests, right? In this case, this is the economic disconnect. So I've talked to people that are in the same culture as Howard Schultz, let's put it that way. And they genuinely don't get it, as Howard Schultz showed you in that clip. He's like, they seem like they've lost faith in government and companies. And he's like bewildered as to why. I can tell you, Howard, it's super easy because those companies pay off those politicians through campaign contributions and then get deregulations and lower taxes and every advantage you could possibly imagine. We can't even negotiate our own drug prices. Meanwhile, people die because they're rationing insulin and other drugs and they can't get any higher wages. And we're being crushed by those companies that you value so much, that you think are God's gift to humanity. No, those are the corporate machines that are steamrolling the American citizens. And he genuinely doesn't get, by the way, it's not just him. Almost no one in power gets it. They think, what? Why are you guys losing faith in these great companies and government that we have? It's working out great for me.
Yeah, it's working out
great for you.
For you, exactly. So why don't we actually hear from Starbucks workers? Howard Schultz should maybe sit down and listen to these workers himself, because it seems like he doesn't even understand what is motivating them to want to unionize in the first place. So what do the employees say? Let's hear from a 20-year veteran worker at Starbucks named Daniela. Let's watch.
The communication between higher ups and our stores started to become non-existent. They introduced so many new things like components to drinks, mobile orders, deliveries. We were never given the tools to make that happen properly. We were doing all this extra work and we weren't getting paid for what we think that we were worth.
I worked at Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf while I was in undergrad, and it is an incredibly difficult job. It is fast paced, you're on your feet the entire shift. You deal with customers who are incredibly rude, they want their coffee. I had a hot latte literally thrown on me on my very last day of work, okay? It is an incredibly difficult job. And Starbucks, its profitability is dependent on these workers. And they're looking at what they're getting paid relative to what the corporation is making off of their labor. And they want a bigger piece of that pie, and quite frankly, they deserve a bigger piece of that pie. That is why they are unionizing, Cenk.
So Howard Schultz gets frustrated, and look, I run this company as well, so I understand both sides. And so he says, well, look, they say they want a seat at the table and they want more say in what we do. I don't get it, I don't know what that means. Well, if they mean, hey, listen, don't introduce the frappe because the grande is working out with the venti, whatever. Look, you weren't part of the market research. You're not involved in finance or the marketing angle of it. So I have some sympathy for, everybody has a specialty, and I'm not sure that you're gonna, all the pieces of the puzzle. So okay, fine. But when they talk about economic seat at the table. But Howard, you keep bragging about the $40 billion you just added over the last 10 months. You can't then turn around and say, no, I can't share a bigger piece of the pie with my workers. And then tell me that you have these great values he came up with in the 1970s that you're not at all applying today.
In fact, you keep referencing that part of the interview, and I think that was a telling part because he said the quiet part out loud, right?
Yeah.
So why don't we go to that where he brags about the profitability of Starbucks and his performance?
You've said that unions are contrary to Starbucks' vision.
Yes.
And that's your vision.
Well, it's not only my vision. I think the 51-year history of Starbucks is a vision, a collective group of people that believe in doing everything to create value for our people so that we can create value for our shareholders, and we've done that.
Value for our shareholders. Understand that under this model, under this system, that is the first priority. That is the most important part of running a business in the United States if it is a publicly traded company, as Starbucks is. Let me just give a few statistics here, some numbers, because you made a really good point, Cenk, about how there's enough wealth here, enough revenue being generated, enough profit being generated, that unionizing doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to hurt the company. And in fact, with hundreds of these stores now unionized, it appears that it hasn't hurt the bottom line for Starbucks. First, when the organizing started, Starbucks reported a 31% annual growth in profits in 2021. The year workers began unionizing, as well as $8.1 billion just in the fourth quarter of that year. And guess what? They're doing even better now. They're doing even better now. So Starbucks has pulled in record sales in 2022. In the latest fiscal quarter, sales in North America were up 11% compared to the same period in 2021. Now, the sales are up because there are workers behind the counter at the cash register, taking the orders, making the orders, and getting the product out to the consumer. There is no profit and there is no revenue without those individuals. They deserve a bigger piece of the pie. That's not saying that they deserve, a disproportionate piece of the pie, but they certainly deserve more than they're getting paid now, and they deserve better working conditions, including the tools necessary to carry out whatever new initiative Starbucks has or new product Starbucks has.
So last two things from me. One is $8 billion in a quarter means that and assuming the fourth quarter is a little bit better than the other quarters, is around $30 billion in not revenue, but profits per year, okay?
Nuts.
Don't tell me that you don't have enough for the workers. One of our members wrote in, Flux wrote in, I worked for Starbucks for 8 years and the mission statement was always something we prided ourselves on. The mission statement used to be essentially, when we take care of you, you take care of us. But if you're making $30 billion in profit, and they've got to unionize to get better wages and other benefits, are you really taking care of them? It certainly doesn't look that way. And finally, the media is so interesting, guys. If you watch this interview, Poppy Harlow actually asked him about the unionization many times. So you would actually get the sense of maybe she was a little bit tough on him, right? She kept going back to that issue, right? But what the magic is in what you don't see, okay? So number one, Howard Schultz wanted to do an interview to get his side of the message out because he thought, hey, the union guys are constantly in the press and we're not answering them. So I'm gonna pick a place that's gonna give me what I think is going to be the softest and easiest interview. In this case, it was CNN. So what is implicit in that interview, given that she's gonna ask about unions, that's the whole point, is to come on to answer these questions. But not questions that are too aggressive, right? And the framing matters a lot. So I noticed in 3 or 4 different instances of that interview, you could watch it for yourself. When Howard Schultz says something, and especially something that is pro Starbucks and is maybe even a little inspirational in their own mind, they would then roll tape of wild applause.
Oh, that's right.
And it was leading into the next segment, and there was always an ostensible reason. When he ran for president, he's going on stage and there's applause. Starbucks workers applauding when the union instead of him. But he would speak and there would be applause. Then they went to Brooklyn, his home growing up. And they did like a third of the interview about how poor he was and how he worked his way up and how he's an average man, just like you guys with those values.
It's what the New York Post did with their recent puff piece on Ron DeSantis, painting him as this like working class, blue collar guy who went to Yale.
Yeah. And they're sitting in a comfortable studio and they're having a genteel conversation back and forth. And if you watch the whole thing, you're left with the impression of, this is a good guy, and he's just like us. He's just struggling with this union issue, right? And he keeps saying that their wages and benefits are great, right? So at the end, you wind up thinking, I guess the union could be wrong here, right? If you watch the whole piece. But by the way, wait a minute. Did you hear from the union at all?
Nope.
Did they do a 10-minute soft piece with a union leader? Did they go to their home that they grew up in and see their poor or middle class background, et cetera? It's the acts of omission, it's the acts of framing. Look, Noam Chomsky taught me this, and I'm telling you a small part of it. They've been doing this for a long, long time. Mainstream media's job is not to give you the news, it's to give you theater that makes you go, oh, I think the corporation might be right after all. So you can't, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
One of my favorite stories is coming up next. James O'Keefe has been forced to resign from Project Veritas. We'll tell you why, complete with a lot of fun video. Don't miss it.
Back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, Nick S, and Randy Presmy. Nick and Randy, thank you for joining. We appreciate it. Casper.
Fun news. Let's do it.
As a former board member told me 10 years ago, Project Veritas will never be stopped from the outside. It will only be because we stopped ourselves, right? I'll get to that too in a minute. Prophetic as it may be, that is exactly where we find ourselves in the situation today. A situation where I've been stripped of my authority as CEO and removed from the board of directors. I bet you didn't know that.
We know now. That was James O'Keefe, of course, who has been forced to resign from Project Veritas for his alleged mistreatment of staffers and his alleged misuse of the nonprofit's funds. And we've got all the details about what those accusations are. Now, he was placed on paid leave earlier this month amid a dispute with the nonprofit's board. The board reversed O'Keefe's firing of 2 top executives and also received a lengthy memo from unhappy employees and staffers detailing how he has been outright cruel, how his conduct is basically, it equates to mistreating the staffers, and there are specific details in the memo that we're gonna get to in just a second. Now, the lengthy memo regarding his treatment and cruelty was signed by a third of the employees over at Project Veritas. So it's not like, oh, there's some unnamed individual within the staff that doesn't like him, or this is some sort of hatchet job against him. A third of employees signing on to this letter is a pretty big deal. And here's what they say. James has become a power-drunk tyrant, and he is exactly who he pontificates on who he should be exposing, the memo said.
Ouch.
Working for O'Keefe at Project Veritas can mean being publicly humiliated by him in what amounts to public crucifixions, and even being required to take lie detector tests, his unhappy employees write in the memo. So apparently there were some employees that he suspected were leaking things to the press, and he had the staff take polygraph tests. I mean, it's insane. There's more, there's a lot more. Let me read one more for you. James has become, a power drunk tyrant. I just really wanted to emphasize that.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah.
But look, so we're gonna get to the music videos, don't worry.
No, it's the best part.
They're hilarious. Okay, hold on.
Okay, but
they spent money on it.
They did.
Great.
But here's the debate that's gonna happen. Was the music video good?
That's a debate? Oh my God, stay tuned. Okay, but I only have like a tiny bit of sympathy for the employees. Why? First, they work at Project Veritas.
1000%.
You went to go work for a douchebag organization that smears others and edits tapes in a deceptive way to try to hurt organizations and other human beings.
Yeah.
And you didn't get treated well. Duh.
Yeah, let's also be clear, because Project Veritas loves to sue. We believe and we think that Project Veritas is a douchebag organization. Go ahead, Cenk.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
That is very important to clarify,
Yep.
okay? So you went to go hurt others, and then you're like, it turns out they're for authoritarianism. But that's what you signed up for. And they're really mean. Well, that's what you signed up for. What did you think was gonna happen? That he was gonna be mean to people you don't like, but internally he was just gonna be an angel? No, he's just as much of a douche as you wanted him to be to others.
We think he's a douche.
Okay, in our opinion.
In our opinion.
Okay, so seriously, on the other hand, it is interesting that they went like, oh yeah, we're gonna get those libs and we're gonna own them and we'll just doctor the videos. In my opinion, okay, you can watch the videos for yourself and see the missing parts.
And also there's quite a bit of reporting, extensive reporting showing that the videos have been doctored. So,
yes,
yeah.
You can read that reporting for yourself. Look, you can see what's missing and what they put in. It's super obvious. Anyways, and And they're like, you wanted to do that, and then you get this guy, and then you're like, oh wow, when it's done to you, that doesn't feel good. Well, that's what a conservative is, right? They just don't think anything matters until it's done to them. Well, now it was done to you. Of course O'Keefe is like this. Look, some of the stories are outrageous in terms of the abuse, but then the misuse of funds for musicals is just the greatest thing in the world.
So we're gonna get to the misuse of funds because that is probably the juiciest part of this, but a few more comments from the staffers who were abused. During a September 2022 trial against a Democratic consulting firm that O'Keefe later lost, an employee complained that O'Keefe berated them in front of jurors because he needed something to eat. He was very hungry. Ultimately, the employee alleged O'Keefe took a sandwich from a heavily pregnant woman, which Will Sommer over at the Daily Beast. I get it, she was 8 months pregnant, but heavily pregnant, I don't find better wording. Anyway, the staffer said, quote, I was yelled at in front of jurors because he was hungry and then he took the 8-month pregnant woman sandwich. But
does anything describe a conservative better than, I want your stuff and I don't care who you are. I'm pro-life, but give me that sandwich. I don't give a damn if you or your fetus wants it.
In another apparent reference to O'Keefe, a staffer complains about employees at Project Veritas getting spat on. So like Jimmy Dore apparently works there. I'm kidding, that's a joke.
Well, he would spit if he heard that joke because he was just laughing at all his jokes.
Yeah. Rule number 1, you can't spit in an employee's face over a tweet, true story.
So guys, that one's critical to me. So Will Sommer doesn't have a great reputation at the Daily Beast either, by the way. So I take everything he says with a grain of salt. So in this case, we don't know if it was like he's screaming in his spittle. That's bad, right? But it's different than going and spitting in an employee's face over a tweet. If it was actually spitting in the face, no, like you should go to jail, but that's assault. Like no one should tolerate that. That's insanity.
Yes.
But we don't know which one it is, to be fair.
And there's been a lot of turmoil at Project Veritas, including an FBI investigation. So Project Veritas faces a number of threats, including an FBI investigation and an ex-employee's lawsuit alleging that O'Keefe oversaw a raucous, sexually charged workplace complete with at least one drug overdose. Project Veritas has denied breaking any laws in the FBI investigation and is fighting the lawsuit. But in December, the group did lay off several staffers. All right, so with that said, let's move on to the accusations pertaining to the misuse of funds, okay? Now, the board has claimed that it was legally required to call a board meeting after it discovered that O'Keefe was committing what they described as financial malfeasance. The board's list of alleged misspending incurred by the nonprofit at O'Keefe's direction included a $14,000 charter flight to meet someone who could repair his boat. Other alleged expenses included $150,000 over 18 months on private black cars and thousands of dollars on DJ and other equipment. The board also accused O'Keefe of wasting $60,000 on dance events.
Dance events.
Which, look, I like dance events, but I'm not gonna use TYT funds to do it, right?
60,000, how much dancing did you do, brother? Man, that is a dance-a-thon. Saturday Night Live over there.
Now, in December,
Fever, sorry.
In December, Project Veritas also acknowledged improperly giving O'Keefe $20,500 in excess benefits to pay for Project Veritas staff to accompany him to Virginia as he performed a lead role in a production of the musical Oklahoma. What? What? Okay, and then finally, there was some money put into what you're about to see, which is in fact something put together by O'Keefe, starring O'Keefe. Just enjoy, you're welcome.
I just can't believe that my face is on TV. Oligarchy, am I left or right? M-O-G-O-P. Oligarchy. Do I have faith in truth? Does truth have faith in me?
James O'Keefe is
is suing Twitter for defamation.
Project Veritas taken down because they confronted a Facebook executive.
Take a video like that down, it would be due to doxing concern.
I can show you a video of CNN doing the exact same thing.
Twitter made factual statements about our client that are false.
Twitter, CNN, Zuck is working with Dorsey.
Come on, guys. Come on.
Oligarchy.
No, but I kind of loved the song. Like, is that bad?
Well, we played it on Old School. Now we play it here. It's gonna get stuck in my head. Don't do that to me. Oligarchy.
Can we just play the audio for a minute and like really like appreciate the musical genius behind this song?
He's gonna think it's real. He's gonna think it's real.
No, I kind of like the beat.
You're crazy. This is a weak ass amateur horse track.
But also, look, I'm a little concerned about children seeing that video. It might groom them. You know what I'm saying? It might persuade some of the male kids in this country to betray their masculinity, right?
I don't know. People are asking.
Keith is suing Twitter for defamation.
I love the bat thing.
Taken down because they confronted a Facebook executive.
Look at the bat.
Be due to
It's a sledgehammer.
I can show you a video of CNN doing the exact same thing.
Factual statements about our client.
I love it so much.
They're walking like an Egyptian.
Twitter, CNN,
Come on, it's good. It's good.
Dorsey.
Oligarchy. Okay. Bart made a good point last night on Old School. It's actually, we think it's based off of a Prince song, Controversy.
It is.
Oh,
it is.
that's why I like it.
Yeah, it is.
That's
it
why
is.
I like the beats.
It is from a Prince song, and this just validates the nature of conservatives going after
Stealing
a song,
things?
stealing from someone who is not alive.
And by the way, also black. So cultural appropriation. Okay.
He wants to be in musical theater so bad. So bad.
Guys, that's what
Live your dream, James. Yeah. Live your dream.
Dance your little butt off, okay, yes. James? Go get him!
Oligarchy.
Oligarchy. So guys, first of all, here's another set of folks I don't shed a tear for. The donors to Project Veritas.
Oh, I love it.
Some of the worst people on earth.
I love it.
I can't get enough of it. Waste their money.
Oligarchy.
The funny thing is, the donors are part of the oligarchy.
Oh, I love it so much.
And it's like such a hilarious meta meme, right? Where they're doing a song about the oligarchy funded by the oligarchy.
Oh, it's so good.
Okay.
So good.
And they don't make any money. They get 20 million a year from these right wingers. And O'Keefe's like, I don't know what to do with $20 million a year. So you know what? I'll just put on the musicals that I always dreamed about as a kid.
No, O'Keefe knows exactly what he wants to do with the $20 million a year. We just listed it for you.
Yeah, look guys, man, I mean, here we check like every $4 receipt, okay?
Oh my God.
And meanwhile, these guys are spending $150,000 on cars. Like not cars that they even buy, just like for simple transportation because they want to live like rock stars. So they take I don't care at all that they wasted douchebag right wingers money. I love that they wasted it. Hey, idiots who gave money to Project Veritas, in my opinion, enjoy the stupid ass song they spent it on. Dude. And I hope you enjoyed the Oklahoma production in Virginia where they went to for $20,000.
Oh my God. Can I just say, like really think about what it took to put that music video together. Like they went to train, like do the choreography, learn the choreography, practice. Like
they had to bother ripping off Prince and writing lyrics.
How much time did you spend on practicing? Kevin O'Keefe, James O'Keefe. Why do I keep wanting to call him Kevin? It's weird. But anyway, that was fun. So.
Yeah. And now, of course, there's a bunch of right wingers who are like, we stand with James O'Keefe.
Yeah, Charlie Kirk.
You should be able to abuse your workers.
Right.
I mean, what's the whole point of a conservative? You can't dominate others and oppress them and keep them under your boot, right? What are these woke companies now at Project Veritas demanding not to be spit on?
Yeah, Charlie Kirk, Steve Bannon, Don Jr., the usual suspects are backing O'Keefe.
Yeah, Steve Bannon took he got indicted and then pardoned by Trump because he's a criminal, right? over the money that they were gonna steal for their fake wall. You think he's gonna mind O'Keefe stealing from donors? That's like Republican 101. By the way, if you're a Republican donor, do not ever shed a tear that someone's taking money from you and misspending it. The whole point of your donation is to take money from the rest of us for tax cuts for the rich and deregulation so you could rob the rest of us. So you'll excuse us if we don't give a damn about how your corrupt money was wasted.
Oligarchy. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got an update on Weak Pete. What's going on with the Norfolk Southern debacle, that and more. Don't miss it. We'll be right back.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.